Patriot. This is, like I said, this is a social deduction game. We need to determine who is playing as the president. We do that by rolling this D8. So, that's Burnie, right. You're going to get to choose one of these 4 presidents, and you could look through, they all have their own strengths and weaknesses, and the rest of us are going to look through these 12 different character cards and pick one of them. I want to point out, most of these characters, they all have their own strengths and weaknesses. We could spend time digging into what those are. I haven't yet.
Interesting.
There is actually a section in the rule book at the back that like gives you a brief summary of like the difficulty level of each character and like what their style of play is. So if you want to look at that, you can. I want to point out, so the card is laid out the same for every character. On the left side here, there is a grid of or a row of numbers from 0 to 10. For most of these characters, 0 to 8 are blue and 9 and 10 are red. There is one president who has all blue numbers, and there's one regular character that only has blue up to 6. That's going to matter for your starting action points every round. You're going to get whatever your highest blue number is. Then there's ways throughout the course of the game where you can increase that counter up to potentially 10. But that's just one little quick tidbit of information when you're picking these characters. Once Burnie has selected his president, he's going to put that president token on the first turn space. And then we will go in clockwise order from there, lining up our characters throughout the rest of the lineup here. That'll be the turn order for the first round. For the second round, we're going to rotate that lineup counterclockwise 1 space, and we'll do that at the start of each of the 5 rounds, where we will rotate counterclockwise. So the president is going to start first. Second player is going to get to draw 1 influence card of their choice from these 4 influence decks.
Okay.
There's finance, spy, science, and war. That'll mean stuff later, but for now, those are the 4 different types. And the second player is going to get 1, third player is going to get 2, etc., and so forth around the table for our starting hand of cards. First, I want to just point out what these influence cards look like. There, you can see I've got a couple laid out over on that corner there. In the top left, there's an icon to tell you what kind it is. There's also text on the top right. Science and finance are out. But there's also going to be a number in that top right corner that tells you how much the value of that influence card is. So not every influence card is equal. Some influence cards are going to have action text at the bottom. That is only going to come into play in one specific circumstance, which I will get to in just a second. But that's what influence cards look like. Allegiance cards. Everybody's going to get one of these. And in a 6-player game, the makeup for this deck is there's going to be 2 Kill the President cards.
Whoa, that's illegal. 1
yellow Save the President card and 3 green Save the President cards. What? These are your allegiance cards. In the third round, you're going to get another one of these, except for Burnie because he's the president. You're going to get a second allegiance card in the third round that could change your end game objectives.
That's weird, but okay.
The hierarchy. If you have a Kill the President card, it doesn't matter what your other allegiance card is. Your objective is to kill Burnie. If you don't have a Kill the President card, but you have one of these yellow Save the President cards, there's white text down at the bottom that has a secondary mission. Your objective is to both make sure that the president survives and also fulfill whatever that secondary mission is. If you end up with 2 of these yellow cards, you have to fulfill both secondary missions in order to win. If all you end up with for allegiance cards are green Save the President cards, you just want to make sure the president survives. That's it.
Easy enough.
So, like I said, we are going to, in a 6-player game, we have 2 of these. We have 1 of these. I'm going to shuffle through those and just get one at random. And then we have 3 of these guys. The president does not look at their allegiance card. The president simply tucks that card underneath their character card. It's basically removed from the game. The president's objective is to survive. One last bit of setup here. We're each going to draw up starting influence cards. President doesn't get any because you're going to add a whole bunch to your hand at the start of the game anyway. Everybody's going to take a turn over a span of 5 rounds. At the start of every round, we are going to reveal one of these letters that's in the center of the table. These are going to get progressively more difficult for us to fulfill as this goes on. These are threat letters from somebody who's threatening the president's life, and they're making demands.
That's illegal.
Oh.
If we can fulfill the demands before the end of the round,
We don't know what's legal in Karmonia.
yeah, exactly.
Or Karmonia.
If we can fulfill the demands before the end of the round, then we avoid any fail effects. I think there are even some of these that have pass effects that maybe like give us a boost or something. So we want to pay attention to this throughout the course of the game. So that's at the start of every round we're going to reveal. We've already got one on here. We are declaring war and we are here to destroy. We want what we deserve. We want justice. And their demand is that one beacon must be launched by the end of the first round. You'll know what that means in a minute.
Okay.
The first player is the president. Taking a look at your character card, these numbers next to all of the different types of influence, at the start of your turn, you're going to draw up that many cards of each type.
Wait.
So like my guy, at the start of my turn, I'm going to draw 4 finance and 2 science influence cards. That's the first thing you do on your turn. Then you're going to set your action points to whatever your starting action point value is. For most of us, that's 8. I don't think anybody picked anything different than that. I think we're just going to start with 8 action points, so you'll put your little tracker there on your card. Then the next thing you're going to do on your turn is you're going to spend those action points taking actions. There's a whole slew of them that are available. We'll go over each and every one of them in a moment.
Okay.
When you're done taking actions, action points do not carry over to a following round, so there's no sense saving them unless you just don't have enough to do anything else that you want to do. Then you are going to reveal a brief card. So at the end of every turn, we're going to reveal one of these briefs. There are, I think, 4 different types of briefs in the mix, but the one that I really wanted to go over before the game starts are influence briefs. Those, when we're resolving one of those, starting with the active player and then going clockwise around the table, you're going to look at your influence cards and put them face down over in this corner of the board over here, where I've got a couple laid out. So looking at the one that's the brief that's out right now, it says influence needed are spy and science. Basically, let's see, keep this card in play. So if you get 13 or more points contributed to this card, then you keep this card in play, and the next player to complete a scientific discovery draws 3 and chooses 1, ignoring cards marked with reject. That's a really great effect for us. If we don't get 13 or more, nothing happens. So what that means, since it's looking for spy and science cards, if we want this brief to pass, we want to score 13 or more. So if you play science or spy cards into the mix, you're helping us achieve that goal. If you play any other type of influence into the mix, then you are detracting from our total score.
How do we know if we want to fulfill a brief or not?
We'll read all of that text there.
Okay.
So basically based on what is being resolved from this, that'll determine whether you feel like, yes, I want that to pass, or no, I don't. If we're going for a target of 13 or more, and our targets are science and spy, then and then we go look over at what's in the mix over here. Science is positive. That's going towards success on that brief. So that's worth a positive 1 toward the score. Finance is not in the mix of stuff that we're targeting, so that would be worth -2. Obviously, there'd be way more influence cards in the mix, but right there, that's a score of -1. That's nowhere close to the target, so that brief would fail.
Okay.
we're going to start with the active player. They're going to put cards face down in this section of the board. And
so we're not revealing what
we're not revealing what we put in. You can play as many or as few influence cards as you want into that stack. We'll start with the active player. We go clockwise. Once everybody's played, we're also going to add 2 cards from that public opinion deck that's at the bottom there. That is a mix of 10 cards each, 10 of each different type of influence. Then we'll shuffle up the whole stack so that we can't tell who put what in, and we'll reveal the results. Since that was a brief vote, actions come into play. This is the only time that the action text matters is on a brief, an influence brief. So this one, if this card gets played on a brief vote, each player would gain 1 science marker from that card. You play that influence card at any other time, the action text is ignored. After everybody has taken a turn, there's a little bit of end of round stuff that we'll take care of, and then all of these tokens, which will be scattered around the board from the actions that we've taken, we'll put back, and then we will rotate them all 1 space counterclockwise, like so.
Oh, okay.
So whoever goes last 1 round will go first the next round, and whoever went first will go second, etc., and so forth. So that'll be the turn order in the following round. I should talk about these 3 different meters in the middle, or at least 2 of them. So, taking a look here, civil unrest is bad for the president.
Usually.
If this gets up to 6, it's going to start a riot.
No!
Let's start a riot.
And I'm going to talk about riots when we get over to the war room actions. Riots are bad news. The threat level here is how in danger is the president. If this reaches the skull and crossbones at the 6, game is over, the president dies.
Oh no.
Uh-oh.
And anybody who's trying to kill the president wins. So if you're trying to prevent
So
the
we don't
president
want
from
threat
dying,
level skull.
we want the threat level to stay as low as possible.
Gotcha.
Yeah. There are 4 different locations, 4 different sections of the board. The Treasury, the Surveillance Center, the Laboratory, and the War Room. Each one of these locations has 4 different tiles worth of actions that you can do on your turn. So what you're gonna we'll take a look at each one at a time. The Treasury, if you want to take one of these actions, you're gonna move your guy, your little standee, over to one of these spaces. I don't know why, honestly. That's a thing that happens because it doesn't block the space off or anything.
It doesn't?
No, it's just tracking that, okay, I'm going here for my first action, I'm going to spend that many action points doing the whatever. But that's what they say to do in the rulebook, so that's what we're going to do. The first space here is pick up finance influence. Very simple. You spend 1 of your action points for the round, and you draw an finance influence card from the finance deck. You can only do this up to 2 per turn. This space shows up at every single one of the different locations for each respective influence deck. This space, gain coins from the bank. This one will cost you 4 action points, and it's going to increase civil unrest by 2. So it's kind of a risk management thing. But this will gain 2 coins from over here into our treasury vault. This is a central supply that everybody has access to. You don't ever take coins into your own personal supply. Coins are always available to everybody. There's an alternative option here. So that was 4 action points and 2 civil unrest for 2 coins. Or you can do 7 action points and 4 civil unrest for 4 coins. Both of those are options at that space.
Okay.
This one, raise the base taxes. Rulebook makes a point of mentioning that there are other ways for the tax level to increase. And this one is kind of an expensive one. It costs you 6 action points and 4 civil unrest.
Oh, that's a lot.
People do not like it when you raise taxes.
No.
That's
But what that does
straight.
is that last meter over here will go up a space, and then at the start of every subsequent round, we're going to add that many coins to our supply.
Oh, okay.
So raising taxes early, not necessarily a bad idea, but maybe doing it this way is a little bit of a gamble because you're spending most of your turn doing it, and you're getting us dangerously close to a riot. Then last space in this location, briefly predict the future. For 3 action points, you can draw the top 2 brief cards, look at them.
Briefly.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Draw the top 2 brief cards, look at them, put one on the bottom of the deck, so get rid of it because you don't like it, and leave the other one on top because you're going to be the next one to resolve a brief card.
That's
Got it? So that's a pretty good one. The other option on that space, you can do the same thing with scientific discovery cards, which are up in this section. You can draw 2, discard 1, and leave the other one on top of the deck. We'll talk about what those do in just a little bit. That is the Treasury. Let's go take a look at the Surveillance Center. So first space here is the same as the first space in the Treasury. You can spend an action point, gain that type of influence. Second space is to launch a beacon, which is our demand for this round. So there's 4 cards with very tiny text on them up in this corner of the board.
Tiny.
Yeah, very tall. Tall text.
Very tall and
You can
tiny.
see there's actually an extra action in this section that says use beacon. The cost is 0 action points plus cost listed on beacon. So that's, if you look over, each one of these cards has a cost printed on it and then its own action. These are special one-time use, once per round actions that are available to us. But none of these are available yet because these beacons have to be launched first. That's what this space is for. To launch a beacon, if you want to launch one of these 4 beacons, you spend 4 action points and 4 coins from our central supply. And you take one of those coin tokens, not one that's from the supply, obviously, something that's not in the supply, and you put it on the launched space. So if you want to launch one of these 4 beacons, 4 action points and 4 coins from the supply, and you put a coin token on the launched space of that beacon, now that beacon is available for the use beacon action. And if you use it, you slide that token over to the used side, and it'll get reset at the end of the round. So that action is only available if this token is here. If you don't like any of these, or you don't have enough coins in the supply or action points to spend on launching one of these, you can do instead 2 action points and 2 coins to launch a random beacon from the top of the deck. You just draw that card and replace one of these with a different one. I think there's only 2 of these in the deck. These are bad beacons. These are that's worthless. So if you get one of those, you're out of luck. That's just a worthless beacon card. Which will matter for this section. This tile, reprogram beacons at a cost of either 3 action points or 3 coins. You can replace any number of unlaunched beacons with new cards from the deck, or any number of launched beacons. You can't mix and match, but if this is what we've got here, and I want to take that action, I could replace all 3 of these, or I could replace this guy with new cards from the deck. If you replace a launched beacon with something new, it comes in unlaunched. It will have to be launched again. The last space in this section of the board is to call an assassination vote. Obviously, if your objective is to kill the president, one way to do that is to assassinate them. This action is going to cost you 7 action points. It's a similar.
It's all my action points.
It's a similar. Yeah, it's almost your whole turn. It's a similar setup to one of those brief influence votes where you're going to play influence cards face down to that corner of the board. Your target influence types are spy and war, and your target number, if you're trying to assassinate the president, is 4 per player. So in a 6-player game, your target number is 24.
But that's very high.
Yes. War and science are towards a successful assassination attempt. The other influence types are against that assassination. So you can put any influence.
Finance.
Yeah, you can put any influence cards into the mix that you want. But if you put in war and spy, you are trying to accomplish that assassination.
Gotcha.
If you put in the other types, you're trying to prevent that assassination. The president isn't the only character that can be assassinated. Anybody else can be the target of an assassination.
What?
Yeah.
There's player elimination?
No wonder there's
actually.
unrest in this
So,
country.
There's character
that's
elimination.
worse.
There's not player elimination. So,
Okay.
if you want to assassinate another character, that will cost. Then the target is reduced. It's only 2 per player, so 12 in a 6-player game to try and assassinate anybody who's not the president.
If, say, I was assassinated, would I then take another character card?
Yes. So here's how that works. If an assassination attempt fails, then nothing happens. The game just continues.
Yeah.
If an assassination attempt is successful, then if it's the president, game's over. Anybody with a kill the president card wins. If it's any other character, then what happens depends on what your allegiance is.
Okay.
If you have any kill the president cards, you must immediately reveal them. And your role in the game at that point is severely reduced. Your action points are permanently set to 0. You have to discard half of your influence cards.
No matter what person you end up being.
Yeah, if you are trying to kill,
Okay.
your
It's
allegiance
just the
stays the same. It's the character's
Oh,
allegiance.
okay,
So,
I get it.
so if you are trying to kill the president and you get assassinated, you reveal all your kill the president cards. You discard half of your influence cards. You discard all of your scientific projects, which we're going to talk about in a minute. All your science markers. And your action points are permanently set at 0. For the rest of the game, all you can do is draw up new influence cards at the start of your turn and then play them on briefs and assassination votes face up. So everybody sees what you are voting from that point forward. If you are assassinated and you're not the president and you are not trying to kill the president, then you are going to reveal one of your goal cards, one of your allegiance cards. You're going to draw a new character to play as for the rest of the game. Discard half of your influence cards. Discard all your science projects and all your science markers. And the other thing is, if an assassin is eliminated, the threat level immediately goes down by 1.
Oh, that's nice.
If anybody else is eliminated, other than the president, obviously, because then the game is just over. But if anybody else is eliminated, threat level goes up by 1.
Oh.
All right, let's take a look up at the laboratory. First space is the same thing as the first space in all of them. You can spend an action point to draw an influence card. Second space, roll for civil unrest. This costs you 3 action points, and you roll a d8. Then you look at that number and line it up with the table, and you'll get to adjust the civil unrest meter accordingly. Before you resolve the results, though, you have the option to spend a coin from our treasury to increase that number by 1. And you can do that as many times as we have coins. So if you roll a 1, but we have 5 coins in the supply, you might want to spend a lot of them so that we don't increase civil unrest.
Oh, because if that goes up, then we start a riot, but we don't know what happens when a riot starts again.
We'll get into that in just a
Okay,
second.
cool, cool. Just making sure I'm following.
Yes.
But riot bad.
Riot
bad.
Yes. Then we have the commence science project action. To commence a science project, you're going to spend 2 action points and increase civil unrest by 2. Because they're like, we have other problems. Why are you working on science?
Because science.
Because people don't understand that science improves lives.
That's right.
Then you're going to roll a d8 and look at this table here. You're going to get science markers based on your roll. And you have the option to discard 2 science influence in order to increase that number before you resolve. These science markers are used over at this action. Make a scientific discovery.
You can just do that. You can just make one.
So yeah, if you have these you go into a personal supply. These don't go into a central supply. So you'll hold on to these for yourself. If you have 4 of these, you can, on your turn, spend 4 markers to make a scientific discovery, where you will draw 2 cards from the scientific discovery deck, and those can look they're going to look one of 2 ways. Most of them,
Bad. That's some bad science.
most of them are good science. If you get 2 of these when you do a scientific discovery, you get to pick one to keep. The other one gets discarded.
Wait,
And I could not find clarification on this anywhere.
I was like, yeah.
But I do believe that whatever card you keep just goes into effect like immediately, or at least based on whatever the text says.
Okay.
But I think you put it face up on the table in front of you.
Okay.
So everybody knows what your scientific discovery is. I think.
How do you know what you're discovering?
It says it on the card there. I mean, it doesn't say like thematically what it is, but this one, keep this card in play until required, gain 4 additional action points, and discard after use. So basically, you get to keep that card in front of you, and then on a subsequent turn, or maybe later on the same turn, you're just like, I'm going to discard this, I gain 4 action points to spend for the rest of my turn. If any of the scientific discovery cards you draw look like this, with bad science, we immediately resolve the negative effect of that card. If you draw 2 of these, we resolve both of them.
Oh.
Uh-oh.
But after we resolve them both, you then have the option to decide if you want to press your luck and draw another card, and hopefully it's a good one. And you can keep doing that until you've either just been like, you know what, I'm done. I don't want any more bad science.
That's enough bad
Flooding the world
science
with
for
bad
one day.
science.
Oh,
Or until you get one, like it's just one card at a time. Finally, you get something with good science on it. Now let's take a look at the war room. Obviously, the first space is the same as the first space in all of them. It just gain influence. The rest of them, I'll explain in a second. But first, we need to go over riots.
okay.
So, civil unrest gets to 6. We immediately reset it to 0, and we draw a riot card. These are really bad news. So, and this one is really gross. For a 5+ player game, it says we're going to add 3 rioters
Holy
to
crap.
each location.
that
So,
mean?
what that means is, at each one of the 4 locations on the board, we roll a d4 for each rioter we're adding. For each rioter
bad
that's being
science.
added, so this card says we're adding 3 rioters to each location. That means at each location, we're going to roll the d4 3 times.
Oh,
Whatever you roll, you put a rioter on that space. If there's a rioter on a space, you can't take that action. In the event that you happen to roll the same number that already has a rioter, good news! We don't have to add one there.
That's good news.
that is good news.
That could be
Silver lining.
punishing.
But if there are already rioters on every space at a
God.
location, and we're supposed to roll to add a new one, we add one to defense space 5, which increases the threat level by 1.
Uh-oh.
Oh.
Also, the first time a rioter gets added because of a riot card, threat level goes up by 1.
Okay.
So
Uh-oh.
that's each riot card that comes up. Every time we resolve a riot card, if we add any rioters, threat level's going up by 1. Then that riot card is going to stay in play on one of these 2 spaces down in the bottom corner, unless there's already 2 riot cards there, and then it just gets discarded. But those cards stay there until we have cleared all the rioters off the board. If we don't get rid of them by the end of a round, we're going to resolve those active riot cards again.
Oh, that's bad.
It's real bad.
That's real bad.
So let's talk about how we prevent these things from happening.
Is this where the robots come from?
This is where the robots come in.
Yay!
The deploy troops action is a cost of 4, 6, or 8 action points plus 1 civil unrest per troop to deploy 2, 3, or 4 troops to the board. They look like this. You put them on any space that doesn't have a rioter on it. And then, if we are supposed to add a rioter to that space, we don't. We just remove the troop.
Oh.
So the troop prevents new rioters from showing up.
Yes,
That's
rule
what
with an
those
iron
do.
fist and fear. That works every time.
So
There's also the move deployed troops action there, which costs 1 action point, and then you get to move any and all, or just one, whatever, anything in between, whatever. All the troops that are already on the board, you can move to new spaces. That's what that one does. The last action available on this in this location is executing rioters.
Oh, wow.
Ouch.
That's
Very
it's got
excessive. I know.
dark.
It's excessive.
maybe assassinating the president wasn't dark enough.
Now it's dark.
You will notice that this
Oh,
one
violence?
this one doesn't have a number on it. If we roll a 4 in the war room, we're not going to add a rioter. here because the fourth space has to stay available to us because that's the only way we get rioters off the board. You take that action, you're going to spend 3 action points to roll the d8, and then you'll resolve based on whatever number you get on that table.
My God.
If you don't like the roll that you got for trying to execute a rioter, you can just discard any 2 influence cards to re-roll, and then try it again.
Okay.
So if you roll a 1, we're going to lose a troop, which is even worse. That covers all of the actions that are on the board. The last thing that I want to mention, please, is when we get to round 3, we're gonna deal out new allegiance cards to everybody except Burnie. Burnie doesn't get another one because he's the president.
Do we
I don't
keep
even
our
want one.
current
You
allegiance?
keep your current allegiance
Okay.
card, you just add a second one. So if there's any kill the president cards in your lineup, that's all you care about is killing the president.
Okay.
If you don't have any of those, yellow save the president cards have secondary objectives. You have to fulfill all of those secondary objectives as well as making sure the president survives.
What happens if you don't?
If you don't, you don't win.
Okay.
And then the green save the president cards are just basic, make sure the president stays alive. Once we add those new allegiance cards to the game, then at that point, anybody with a kill the president card that's still alive has the option to reveal themselves as an assassin. There's pros and cons to that. You'll flip your kill the president card face up, and your action points are going to be reduced to 4 for the remainder of the game instead of 8. The threat level is going to go down by 1 when you reveal yourself, but you are immune from execution at that point. You cannot be assassinated if you reveal yourself. And you're going to have a new set of actions available to you that are on the back of the day 3 letter card. When this letter card comes up, if you want to kill the president, you have the option to reveal yourself. And if you do that, you'll get access to these 4 new actions, which I just want to describe really quickly. Is that the shot? Yeah. You can execute troops, you can lower taxes, you can increase public opinion, which means we'll add more random cards into the mix on votes for that round. And you can add super briefs. There are 8 brief cards that are extra challenging.
You can buy super briefs in like a 6-pack.
Further. There's 8 brief cards that are super challenging, and this is one way to add them into the mix. They can also be added through, I think, regular brief cards and other stuff that'll come up throughout the course of the game. I believe that's everything.
Hey, thanks for hanging out. If you want to spend more time with us, do us a favor. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and most importantly, head on over to twitch.tv/BNB Tabletop and give us a follow there. We play board games live every Sunday night at 5 p.m. Pacific Time on a show we call The Board and Barrel. And we like to keep things interactive. You guys can influence what happens throughout the course of a game with our Buff and Nerf house rules. You can also make predictions on how things are going to pan out, play virtual bingo for a chance to win a free board game of your own, and heckle us and stuff from the chat. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you Sunday night.